Hey, good afternoon, everyone. This is Dave Kotz from National Safety Training Center with episode 2 of the Life Saving Chronicles. Here we're going to talk with Dan Castagna about equipment you might need for your CPR business. Dan, please introduce yourself. Tell us all about what you guys do.
So my name's Dan Castagna. I run emergency care health and safety here out of Pennsylvania. We run and work with YMCA's, JCC's, indoor and outdoor facilities to run aquatic and land-based training.
The idea is we've got 2 experienced CPR providers. We've tried almost every CPR piece of equipment that exists, and we want to talk to you about a couple that have been successful for us. We might mention a couple that have not been successful as well, but we're going to focus on what works to kind of help you in your effort to be a CPR instructor. Dan, you want to go first talking about the Preston mannequins that you seem to like?
I personally like Preston mannequins. A few things that I like about them. One, they're easier to transport than the big reds or the Laerdal adult mannequins. They have built-in feedback devices, self-guided mannequins, and the chests are a lot easier to rise with the ventilation than any of the other mannequins with using a face shield.
Okay, so in lay CPR classes, we either use face shields and or pocket masks. So you've had better luck using the face shield on the Preston mannequins. Now, let's just talk about that feedback system you mentioned. On the Preston mannequin, how does that feedback system work?
So the feedback systems are designed with inside the motion sensors that based off of the clicks that you're given to the mannequin when doing a downward compression of a rate. And then that's how it's guided to the mannequin lights that are on the left, over the left-hand shoulder. Right. There's there's one yellow, one red, one green, and 2 green.
So there's some lights up here on the mannequin. As the providers are doing CPR, the compressions and ventilations, the instructor and the participants can look at those lights, and that kind of gives them direct feedback on their level of success.
Yes. So if you explain the lights before you practice doing chest compressions, and the learner sees that they're only having one light up or a yellow light, they know what the colors mean and the rate. So they know to pick up their speed is a self-guided to get to the 100 to 120.
So it provides good feedback for the students. In particular, correct, for lay rescuer classes, these lights are pretty self-explanatory. I think the students get decent feedback with those lights, and it kind of gives them the information they need to either improve or know that they're hitting their goals. And the same with the instructor. Correct. So any disadvantages to the Preston system?
The only disadvantage that I see with them, one, if they have electronics in it, and if they end up on a pool deck, that the lights can, have water get inside the system.
Sure. And anything on a pool deck and electronics don't always mix well.
The other part is the clips on the Prestons over the shoulders that rise the chest apart, so that way you can change the lungs. Those clips wear out quickly. So when you give a ventilation, the chest will pop straight up. So you have to change the inner shell. I change it probably once a year. I change them all.
Okay, fair enough. So, let's conclude. Preston is a good quality mannequin. It allows for a jaw thrust, correct?
That is correct. If you have the jaw thrust, if you have the head that allows the jaw thrust.
So when you're purchasing that mannequin, you need to make sure, if you're teaching basic life support or lifeguarding classes, you need to make sure you're getting the right version that has the jaw thrust head piece. So good quality mannequin, it absolutely works. I think it's kind of optimized for the lay rescuer classes. I like the lights, and I think the lay rescuer people really enjoy that type of feedback. So let's talk about the big red mannequin made by Braden. The Red Cross seems to love this particular mannequin. Specifically, what this mannequin does that other ones do not is it has some LED lights that goes around the body and up to the head. And when you're successful with your compressions, there's a big light on the forehead that shines red. That's your feedback device. What's your experience been with the big red mannequins, Dan?
I've never used them. I know people that have, and they are really, really good for a classroom training. They are not good to be used outside in any aspect, or the pool deck.
So I have used Big Reds. I've used them on pool decks. I've used them in a classroom. I've used them outside. Again, I think they're excellent at the lay rescuer level because that feedback with the light that goes on when you're doing compressions correctly is wonderful. It's simple, easy feedback. They are heavy, considerably heavier than the Prestons. They are considerably heavier than the Laerdals. So again, Big Red is wonderful. It's big and heavy. The issue is big, heavy, optimized for lay rescuer class with that kind of LED light that shows blood circulating and ultimately the light that goes on the forehead when you've kind of achieved the objectives of the CPR exercise.
Yes.
Any other thoughts on the Big Red mannequin that you have, Danny?
No. Like I said, I've never used it. I know people who have, and they're highly expensive.
They are.
So if you're just starting out in your own business, listen, eBay.
We'll talk about sources about where you can find these mannequins at the end, but so Big Red is probably your most expensive choice.
Correct.
All right, so now let's kind of go back to my personal favorite mannequin, which is the Laerdal QCPR Annie mannequin. So that is kind of the latest iteration from Laerdal, which debatably kind of started the whole CPR training mannequin regime. I actually don't know how long ago. It's been quite some time. I started doing this in 1984. That was the mannequin that we used back then. Laerdal QCPR mannequin. Hold on. Let me get one. Here we go. This is the Laerdal QCPR mannequin. Chest works pretty well. We've added some Velcro, which we use with our AED pads. We'll cover that in a little bit too. The head does tilt back, so you can do the head tilt chin lift. The jaw thrust also works on these mannequins. Again, that's important if you're teaching BLS and or lifeguarding where you need to do a jaw thrust. These particular mannequins are eminently field repairable. All the parts are easy to access. They're easy to replace. The lungs are easy to replace. We own about 150 of these things. So we have them distributed throughout the country with our instructors, and they just work. They're a great solution, and we haven't even gotten into the really cool part. I feel like I'm having a good time with my mannequin here. The really cool part about these is the feedback system is not the lights. It's not an LED on the forehead. It actually links up to either your iPad, your phone, or a tablet. We'll show you the graphic up here of what it looks like, and it provides you real-time data with how deep your compressions are going, the rate of your compressions, how much air you're ventilating your mannequin with, and it ultimately gives you the chest compression fraction, which is what we're looking for as instructors to determine your success with CPR. So from a technology point of view, these mannequins are much more sophisticated and they give much better feedback. They're optimized for medical providers, for people who have a duty to care. So EMTs, nurses, doctors, and I'll even go with lifeguards who are required to have the chest compression fraction. So we use these exclusively in our basic life support program, and we have had great success. It is so amazing when you have a bunch of people who are doing CPR and they see their score. They see their score maybe at the first time they practice CPR, and then they see the score after they've practiced 2 or 3 times, and all of a sudden they may have started getting a 50% score, and they end their class in the 90s. That's a very good motivation for them, and good feedback for the instructor. Dan, do you use these as well?
Yeah, we have them. We don't use them for AHA training as we don't have the feedback devices in it.
This mannequin with the QCPR version with all the electronics in it also is available in kind of a non-electronic version. So you can get this without all the electronics in it. And again, they work very, very well. But with specifically for the AHA, they require a feedback device. So it could be the 3 lights that are up here on the Preston mannequins. It could be the Laerdal QCPR, or it could be Big Red with the light on the forehead up here.
Yep.
So all that's true. The Red Cross doesn't require the feedback device, but it does require the instructors in certain classes to calculate the chest compression fraction In this case, the application on your iPad or your phone or whatever does that for you. Anything else you want to say about the mannequins, Danny?
Make sure you know how to use them, because I promise you, things will go wrong and you have to take them apart.
We can cover that in a separate video. But again, these particular ones, the Laerdal ones, are very easy to use. They're easy to repair in the field. We carry spare parts with us. Not that we need them often, but if we need to replace a chest piece or a spring or a clicker, the lungs are very easy to replace. Actually, the lungs in almost all of the mannequins I find are easier to replace. So that's kind of cool. Let's talk a little bit, Danny, about where to find these mannequins. You mentioned before something about eBay.
If you're just starting out, Facebook Marketplace, eBay are your sites that you can find things at a lower cost that are used. Like I said, you're just starting out on this. There's no need to go spend crazy amounts of money on top of the line equipment, because the more you do that, the more you spend, the longer it's going to take you to recoup that.
Retail price on a QCPR mannequin is somewhere in the $300 to $350 range. You might be able to find a little
per mannequin.
You might be able to find a little more expensive, a little less expensive, but they should be between $300 and $350. Now, if you're buying a used mannequin, you should expect somewhere in the half of that, $150. Particularly if it's not a QCPR mannequin. If it's the one without the electronics in it, you should spend, again, somewhere around $150 for the mannequin. Now, there is an upgrade kit available for these. So if you have an Annie mannequin, an older one, without the electronics, you can get the upgrade kit for around $125 to upgrade it to the current QCPR standards. So that's kind of cool. If you find a good deal on the older mannequins, you can upgrade 1, 2, 3 of them at a time as you see fit.
Correct.
What prices have you seen for the other mannequins online?
I just looked it up. So on eBay right now, I just saw some mannequins. There's one here, it's a pre-owned for $50. There's some Laerdal for $26.
Sometimes when you see a deal that seems too good to be true, sometimes it is.
Yeah. Here's a whole set of a 6-pack of 4 Prestons and 2 infants for $700. So, I mean, the best thing to do is just shop around and then go to Facebook Marketplace. But again, you don't need to have a child mannequin. A lot of people tend to have 4 adults, 4 infants, and 4 children. Well, you're wasting your money unless, you're teaching a lot of pediatric CPR with, and they prefer to have the smaller mannequins. But if you're just teaching regular adult and pediatric CPR and child CPR, you can use the adult mannequin.
Well, this brings up a good point, Danny. If you're just getting started teaching CPR, how many mannequins do you need to really start your business?
So thinking now with the Red Cross Lay Responder course and the AR BLS, it's 3 people to 1 mannequin.
Okay.
So if, 3 mannequins would be good to start out with, 4 mannequins. Again, don't go crazy. Right now, for the Red Cross Lay CPR First Aid AED and the BLS right now are 3 to 1.
If we look briefly at the American Heart Association, new instructors there are limited to 6 people per class, if I recall correctly. So if they had 2 mannequins, they could take care of 2 adults and 2 infants. They could really take care of some classes as they're getting started with the American Heart Association as well. You don't need 10, 20 mannequins. You can get started with 2 adults and 2 infants, and that should be just fine. You can upgrade and get more as you go along, but to get started, 2 is kind of the minimum. 3 is probably a good idea. What we have found, and Danny, you can back me up on this, everything breaks. Everything breaks. Murphy is alive and well, and whatever you think is growing so well, and you tested it the night before, you tested it that morning, it'll still break, and it happens. So having a backup plan, backup supplies is always a great idea.
Yeah. If you ain't met Murphy yet, you will when teaching.
Yes, you will. And we haven't even gotten into do you need a laptop? Are you going to show the presentation? Oh my. HDMI cords. There's all that. We'll cover that another time as well. The other things we wanted to cover today, other than the mannequins, were the AED trainers. There are a large variety of AED trainers out there. We can tell you some that we've worked with that we enjoy and kind of work well. And we can talk about some that we've had different experiences with. Which one do you want to talk about first, Dan?
So let's talk about my personal favorite ones, which is the WLN. I personally like those. However, you did get me to switch, and I really enjoy them now because of the price cost. And so I'm a WLN person. I had Preston's. They're really the only two that I use besides the little, I forget the name of them.
Dave's AED trainer.
Yeah, the little yellow British speaking trainers that you might want to buy a lunchbox to put them in.
Hold on, we got that. Well, finish talking about the WNLs, and then I'll bring in Dave's little yellow lunchbox.
So WNLs they're really good. They're about 3 inches by 4 inches, something along those lines. You can buy them as single, you can buy them double, you can buy them in a 4-pack. They are gel pads, so eventually sticking them together or using them a lot, they will eventually start to dry out. Same thing if you start to use them in, say, a lifeguarding course. They will eventually start to dry out, so you're going to have to change them a lot more. But there's 2 scenarios that you can pick from, and one of them works with the lifeguarding course within the Red Cross scenarios. So,
what kind of batteries do the WNLs take?
AA.
And have you had good luck with them in the aquatic environment by the pools?
I've never had any issues with them. I've also, me personally, I don't allow my students to put them on the floor on a pool deck.
Got it.
If you're assigned to the AED, it sits in your hand.
Got it.
However, with other ones, people come up with creative ideas to not destroy the AED trainers.
And what's the approximate cost of the WNL version?
So the WNL version range is, I think they start at like 106, something like that.
Okay. $100.
Yeah. And then let's see here. For a 4-pack, it's $309, and single are $89.
Okay, not bad. So let's just call it $90 round figures with shipping. Hey, let's talk about the next one here, which is the Preston AED trainer. I feel like Vanna White.
Okay.
Here we go. A lot of people like these. They use these. I think the price point is about the same, somewhere around $100.
So they're a little bit more expensive. So they're they start out for a single at $119. For a single, for a 4-pack, they're $462. So they're a little bit more expensive.
Okay. I have a few of these. We've tried them. The one thing that they do is they kind of insist that you push the pads firmly onto the patient's chest. Otherwise,
yeah, there's a sensor in the center of that.
They use bigger batteries. They use C batteries. I don't know if that makes a difference, but they use bigger batteries. From a size perspective, it's maybe 6 by 9 inches. It's pretty heavy in the grand scheme of things, and is what it is. So there's nothing wrong with them. They work just fine. They're a little more expensive, is what it is. Next one up for grabs.
Okay, so let's all take a trip down memory lane when we were a kid, and we had the microphone, and you had the box that you sang into, and that's exactly what it looks like.
Pretty much. So this is one that the American Red Cross has offered. This is the original one that they had. There's 3 different iterations of it. We'll show you some pictures of each of them. Again, it's marketed by the American Red Cross. There's nothing wrong with them. They tend to have some issues with durability. The pads have had some problems. They definitely have some durability issues.
I will give you a tip, though, if you are using them. The trainers itself can be pretty decent, are pretty decent. The pads is the problem. The best advice I can give you is buy double-sided tape.
So again, Danny likes the double-sided tape. We have taken the pads, we put some plastic folders on the back of the pads. We stick the pads to plastic folders and then use Velcro, and then Velcro on our mannequins to indicate where the pads need to go. Is that perfect? No, but it's a pretty good workaround, and it makes the pads last for literally hundreds of uses as opposed to 1 or 2 uses. Right? How much are these Red Cross ones going for these days, Danny?
CPR Savers has them for $100. The new ones for $120 a pop.
Okay, so they're the most expensive ones we've looked at so far.
No.
So the Prestons were a little bit more?
Prestons were still a little bit more. That we've looked at so far,
right. So nothing wrong with those particular units. They all work. I would say of the three that we've discussed so far, my experience has been all about the same. They last 12 to kind of 18 months. Are you getting longer out of yours, Dan?
Oh, yeah.
How long have you had some of yours?
I haven't bought any new ones besides the little yellow ones.
You've had some that have lasted you years and years?
Yeah, yeah.
That has not...
Well, I also don't let them, when I teach aquatic classes, I do not let them
near the water.
Put them on the deck of the pool. I'm looking at the Red Cross trainers here now, right? So there's a settings on the end of, behind it that looks like it's 3 scenarios.
So I'll show you the one that I have here, the older version. You can see here.
This is the brand new version that they
released.
There's
2 different languages and 2 different scenarios. So the newer one apparently has 3 scenarios in it, which is kind of cool.
Correct. And they are on the Red Cross website, $14.99.
Okay, not bad. A good price. So before I get to my favorite AED, and it is my favorite, I want to talk about there are AED trainers that come from the manufacturers of the real AEDs that look and feel and act like the very real thing. So it could be anything from a Zoll trainer to a DefibTech trainer, etc. Each manufacturer of AEDs manufactures an AED trainer that mimics the real version, same size and shape and everything. Those ones can
Correct.
be, $400 plus. And I have found that they may have some additional features, which are wonderful, but they have the same longevity issues. I have had not great results using the expensive trainers. I've had not great results with the Red Cross versions. I've had not great results with the Preston versions. Is that because occasionally they get near the pool deck? It could be. I'm not as careful as Dan about restricting access to the pool deck to the AED trainers.
Oh, no electronics and puddles on pool decks. They're on the pool deck for the training, but they're not laying in a puddle.
We try, but, lifeguards. Huh. So far we've discussed the Red Cross trainer, the WNLs, the Prestons, and then the manufacturers, the AED manufacturers. The last thing we're going to cover is my favorite. Here we go. These are these nice little mini AED trainers that we get that literally are the least expensive that are out there. We sell them for $55. We'll link them down below, so there'll be a link to purchase them. My wife came up with the brilliant idea to put them in this little lunchbox type thing. So this is the size of a sandwich. The actual AED trainer is not much bigger than my hand, maybe 3 to 4 inches square. It does everything the other trainers do. It's smaller, it's lighter weight, it's less expensive, and up until this week, I've never had one go bad. I finally had one that broke. So the pads, again, are the same. They have the same, diagram on them. There's a little connector that fits in over here. It works just fine, and they travel around in this sandwich box. And we can actually fit 4 of them in kind of a lunch box, it really is what it is.
It's true.
For $55, you can get 4 of these things for the same price as one of the more expensive AED trainers. Kind of cool. So again, they all work. If you have one of these and it's working for you, stick with it. If you need to add more to your training center, at least consider these devices. They're smaller, they're less expensive, and they're available on our website. How's that for a shameless plug?
Yeah, I like that.
What else do we have to discuss? Other important things for your training center? The bag valve mask. This is one of the more difficult things to train people to use if they're not familiar with it. The Red Cross and the Heart Association all have videos that explain it, but it requires some practice, frankly. So when we do healthcare provider classes and lifeguard classes, they must use this. And frequently they come back to us 2 years later for training. I've never seen that device before. Danny and I both videotape our classes, and sometimes we have to show them the videotape of them using it from 2 years ago to remind them, oh, yes, they did. So that's the bag valve mask. This happens to be one that's manufactured by Laerdal. It's the bag 2, I think it is. This is the adult version. They come in several different sizes. For healthcare provider classes, we use bag valve mask. It's the best choice. It's what we use in the ambulance. It's what they use in the hospitals. It's a very good way to ventilate your patient. For lay rescuer classes, it's not really appropriate. It takes a little more skill and practice to use a bag valve mask. So for lay rescuer classes, Danny already mentioned the face shields, which is a piece of plastic with a high-tech hole in it that you can breathe through. That's great.
Yeah.
We prefer to use a pocket mask. So the same mask that you use with the bag valve mask, we take off the mask separately and we use a one-way valve, and now this is a pocket mask. So it's fairly easy to use. It comes with almost every AED. There's a little kit that comes with it that has this particular mask in it, along with a fresh valve. That's what we encourage people to use for our lay rescuer classes.
Just again, that both options are 100% correct. However, the only difference is if you're a trainer teaching the instructor course, you are required to use both a face shield and a pocket mask. It clearly indicates that in the IT guide.
So, Danny, what about old school? Can we do mouth to mouth?
It's in there, but if you choose to, you choose to. You cannot teach mouth to mouth in a CPR class. It's kind of frowned upon. But the two devices that you're using in a CPR class is a face shield and a pocket mask. If you're teaching a Red Cross course, you are required to utilize one of those at the lay level course.
So again, just going back to the course, we can discuss, hey, listen, if you don't have the proper personal protective equipment, a face shield, a pocket mask, a bag valve mask, when might be a time that you'd consider doing mouth to mouth? And that might be a family member, your young child. That might be a time when you would consider doing mouth to mouth. A stranger on the street would probably be a poor choice. So just consider that. Mouth to mouth, it does work, but it's not something that we teach on a regular basis, and it shouldn't be your first line of defense. You should be using personal protective equipment.
That is correct.
So we've talked about bag valve masks, AED trainers, and mannequins, at least the adult mannequins. All of those things are necessary to teach CPR. And if you're starting out your CPR business, could you start with 2 adult mannequins, 2 infant mannequins, a couple of bag valve masks, and a couple of AED trainers? Yes. Yes, you could. And as you get more experience and as you get larger classes, you can add equipment and other resources. You can absolutely start your business with the equipment that we've showed you today. Now, there are some other types of mannequins we'll cover here briefly that we're probably going to dissuade you from using. Danny, any of the particular ones that you want to talk about?
I'll talk the CPR prompts, the blue or gray ones. So just be mindful that the American Red Cross and the American Heart Association does have guidelines for mannequins. And one of the guidelines indicates that the nose has to be able to be pinched. That is a guideline in the mannequins for the Red Cross. They're foam, they're foam. But there's also a newer version of it now that's plastic, a very tough and hard and heavy, durable plastic.
So there's the CPR prompts. What's the other one that we see out there in the marketplace? The ultralight? Yes, the Actars.
So the Actars, again, just make sure that they're on the approved list on what you can and can't use. I personally don't like it.
I agree. Actar mannequins and CPR prompt mannequins are out there on the marketplace. They were used a long time ago when the criteria from the credentialing organizations were a little more relaxed, but they are no longer authorized by at least the American Red Cross and the American Heart Association. So if you teach for someone else, they might be appropriate or they might be allowed, but at least for the Red Cross and the Heart Association, you should choose one of the mannequins that we discussed here today. We'll link below both the Red Cross and the American Heart Association mannequin requirements so that you guys can see those in your terms. There'll be some show notes as well as some other links below for the AED trainer that we have and the other things that we've discussed. Well, that's great. That wraps us up. We're about at our maximum time here. Danny, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a very interesting discussion about CPR equipment for managing your CPR business.